Hi, welcome to the inaugural session of the Colombo Mobile Meetup. See, the Colombo ICT community is a bit strange, isn't it? How much of an effect a small rain can do to the participation in the event? Gives a bit of an indication of how up to which level we can go as a community. But the good thing is that we have an enthusiastic community turning up almost at the right time. So we apologize for the guys who turned up here at the time, but we waited until we get a certain audience to start. By the way, any people who attended the iPhone developer camp a few months back? At least the README guys. Okay. So this is one other initiative that we are conducting under the Colombo Camps community. Colombo Camps community is a community centered around the idea of having a discourse, having a discussion on ICT topics, having a forum that we can discuss the burning problems that we face day to day as developers. So Colombo Mobile Developer Meetup is one of them, and we hope to continue this event with the participation and volunteers to do the session, like Jaufer. So Jaufer volunteered to do the first session today regarding Android. The session is building scalable cloud-connected Android apps using Windows Azure. So in the future, if we are to continue this event as a success, to share our knowledge, to talk about our problems, it's pretty much important that we stay connected and we stay enthusiastic. First thing is, the bottom line is that we need to participate at least, and you can go beyond that, and like Jaufer, you can volunteer to share your experience and knowledge with the community. So stay enthusiastic and volunteer as much as possible. With that invitation, I invite Jaufer to conduct the session. So Jaufer, the stage is yours.
Thank you. How many of you all have actually worked with Windows Azure cloud computing platform? In general, no. Okay, that's good. So Windows Azure launched about 3 years ago, 3.5 years ago, in response to other cloud computing platforms such as AWS being the trailblazers in this arena. The other platform as a service providers like Meetup, who give basically Ruby on Rails applications. So basically, Windows Azure is Microsoft's platform, service platform as a service, running mostly on .NET. About a year and a half ago, they launched something called Windows Azure Mobile Services, right? Basically, this was in response to another company called Pass. They were acquired by Facebook about 8 months back. So basically, what this service is basically a set of services that provide the backend plumbing to your mobile application. Or mobile developers know your app doesn't exist in a vacuum. You usually talk to a server. Right? You don't develop apps that I never came across apps that only work in a sandbox. You usually talk to a server or something. So when you talk to a server through some kind of API, or really REST-based or SOAP or whatever. So you normally have mobile guy and a surveying guy. And scaling the surveying becomes the harder bit when your application actually starts getting popular and you start getting hits your APIs. So, and you obviously need to design your APIs, right, and maintain them. So, services like Windows Azure basically helps you focus on your application and don't worry about the backend stuff. The backend stuff will be handled, right, and the scaling bits, logging, diagnostics, all that kind of plumbing is handled by this. Pass is another service that did something similar, but this is Microsoft's offering. The service itself, so basically I said, focus on building backend logic. So you got stuff like data, so you need to persist data of some sort from your app to your server. We give you a dynamic schema, a NoSQL database. Authentication. Most often you're going to have social logins or federated logins like Facebook, Google, Twitter, Windows Live. So this service gives you a nice little API that can easily integrate a few lines of code, literally a few lines of code, as you will see. Right? You don't have to worry about OpenOAuth 2.0, authentication tokens, all that nonsense. You can basically keep that aside and just focus on your business logic. So, and the server logic gives you a simple backend scripting language that you can basically validate your data, and stuff like that. And most importantly, it also give you real-time services like push notifications. So, and by the way, this is not only for Android. They first launched this for Windows. First, they launched a JavaScript API initially, and then Windows 7 mobile. And later they moved on to iOS. They released SDK for iOS, and now the latest offering is for Windows. For Android. Right. So push notifications. It supports this GCM, which is a Google Cloud Messaging. That's a native push architecture. That must be knowing for Android. APNS for iOS, and WNS Windows notification systems for service, basically for Windows applications. Windows 7 applications. It also gives you, as I said, monitoring, analytics, logging, infrastructure, all that. You see I'll show you the panel. And the client SDK is obviously for all those platforms. Now the service itself, the SDK itself, is a little rough around the edges. It's being continuously developed. So I've noticed the iOS version of the SDK is much more polished than the Android. Android launched about 4 months ago, 4 or 5 months ago, so it's still a little rough around the edges, but it's being continuously. So, getting started, this is not free. Like AWS and other services where they give, even Heroku, give you a free tier, then you can run your applications for free for that. It does not give you a free service, but it does come with a 3-month free trial. You need to have a credit card. Verify they charge you 1 cent to verify your card, and that's it. For 3 months you're done. How they charge you is similar to how AWS and other platform as a service providers charge. It's pay as you go. So no you use, no you right. So no upfront fee, nothing like that. So what you get, if I just switch, I'm not going to put a whole lot of PowerPoint stuff in there. I'm just going to, so what you get for your free tier is you get virtual machine 750 computing hours per month. Continue, basically 750 continuous computing hours. You get an SQL server, 750 hours, website, you get up to 10 websites. We don't care about the websites and stuff like that. We care about the mobile services, the fourth one from the top. We can build up to 10 mobile services. You also get one SQL database, which is MS SQL. And storage, which is more important, 70 GB with about 1 million storage transactions and 220 GB of backup and transfer. So it's more than enough for you to play around with. Right? That's the point. So, yeah. So I'm just going to show you guys. I can't show you the sign-up procedure. That's pretty much self-explanatory. So I'm just going to show you what the dashboard looks like. So people who have I guess none of you have used this, so it's all new to you. People may have used it, it's all old news, but you might, when you code, you might see some of the tricks, some stuff that is not specifically mentioned in the documentation. We'll run through some of those things. So we'll do three things. We'll look at the dashboard. We'll look at how to create a new mobile service. We'll look at how to download an SDK and set up an initial project to work with. So the dashboard. The dashboard is located at managewindowsazure.com. This is not specifically for Windows Mobile Services. This is your dashboard for Windows Azure. So it's a little while to load its application. So got a few things running. This is, by the way, a demo app, a demo account, a file account. I'm not going to log into my actual account, so you can sign up. Alright, so let's just start by creating a mobile service. So I would say new. There are a whole bunch of options, but what we're interested in is mobile service and create. You need a URL. This will be unique. I'm going to say mobile. You can associate your service with a database. You can use an existing one, or you can create a new SQL database. So I'm just going to use a SQL, existing SQL database. Your region for your demo account, by the way, it's only restricted to East US. The data center. This is like the data center where your instance will be created. For the demo account, it's only East US. You get an error if you try anything else. So I'm just going to keep the defaults there. And since I have a few databases, so I'm going to, you know what, I'm just going to create a new database. Let's see what happens. Okay, so choose a server. I already have a server which is in East US. I already created a login. If you don't have any existing users, you get a separate wizard where you can set users up. So I'm just going to think that's right. Yeah. So let's just create the application. Takes a little while. It takes about a minute or so. Sometimes you see the status as not healthy, meaning it didn't start up properly, so you have to delete it and start again or restart the instance. Hopefully that's the case. In the meantime, once you set it up, you've got to need the SDK tools to integrate your app. So where you can find that if you just click on this, you go here and you just go to downloads. It's ready, by the way, but we'll come back to that. So we got mobile. What you need is the mobile SDKs. Got other languages as well, but we can have the mobile SDKs and just download the Android SDK. We're just going to go back and go into my newly created service, which is nodes. So that's ready. Just go in, show the dashboard. So right now, this is basically analytics on your dashboard. You can get stats like your API call rates, how many hits API is getting, the type of CPU usage, memory usage, all of that will be nicely graphed out for you here. You don't have anything. So you look at what these things do later. Right? Most important one here is the mobile service URL. This is the endpoint to your actual mobile service which you just created. So most of the other services like push, integrating Facebook or to Twitter logins, all of them use this URL in one form or the other, right? So download the SDK tools. I have it downloaded here. When you extract it, you're going to see a few jar files. HTTP client is an open source library to HTTP port. This is the library that will be actually using in mobile services. These are just the dependencies it uses. So I've got JSON, which is a library made by Google. Serializing objects. It gives you a nice interface to serialize Java objects, basically, if anyone's used JSON. Yeah, the mobile services API SDK uses that internally. You see that. So what you need to do first, before anything, let's just create a quick project. So we'll alright, so application name by the way, the documentation doesn't say this specifically, but if you read it, you might be mistaken thinking the SDKs only support ice cream sandwich and above. This is not the case, right? It does support the documentation. Basically, the code that you see on on MSDN is going to show you code specific to ice cream sandwich, but this will work all the way down to 2.2, right? Past 2.2, they don't support push notification and stuff like that. So 2.2 is a minimum. You can go all the way to 2.2, which is it's been what, 4 years since 2.2 came out, so it's quite old. You can go all the way. Right now, I'm just going to go with minimum required 8, which is 2.2, and 4.1. So to work on most of the projects. So I'm just going to untick most of these and we'll start with the blank activity. Main activity, find push. Alright. I'm just going to now, the first thing you're going to obviously going to do is copy the jar files to your lips folder. This is a standard thing to do when you want to work with third-party libraries. So I'm just going to drag them here and say copy. So that's it. Basically, you set, get started working with it. From this point on, it's about integration, right? Let me just get back to where I was. Yeah. So we talk about the data services. Right, the backend that you see is Windows Azure SQL database, which is similar to a NoSQL key value pair database. Right, you get something called dynamic schema. You don't have to create your tables ahead of time, table columns ahead of time. Right, you can model it in your code, right, and call the API, and then the API will examine your code and figure out the fields, and it will be mapped by magic on the server end. Right? For example, if you want to say name, ID, and address, you just have to create 3 public variables, int, string, in a class called user, for example. Pass that into the SDK, and it will create a table called users with those 2 columns, map automatically. You don't have to do any setting up. You don't have to set up a schema in any way, right? It also handles throttling, failures, that sort of thing. All the administrative tasks you deal with, running a large scale web app, so are taken care of by. So, but unfortunately, not unfortunately, I guess some might say, no relation. So there is no foreign keys, there is no cascade logic. You're on your own. If you want to move from one table and you want to cascade over to another, you don't get all that. So it's not a relational database as such, although underneath it's running a system at the core, but no relations. There you can obviously join, there are ways to join tables, that sort of thing is possible. But you're responsible for. So let's just quickly run through a quick demo. Okay? Quickly insert a bunch of data to the service that you just created. Right? I'm just going to create a few just a few lines of code to show you the concept. Right? This is not going to do anything useful as such, except demonstrate the concept. So let's do this. First thing you will need is your source. I don't need a bunch of this, so let's take it out. You will need something called mobile service client. This is your main mobile service client. I will call it M client. Initialize it. This is the client. This is the object that will call for all your operations, pushers, for inserting data, whatever. This is authentication. This is your client. Right? So you need to initialize it, give it your credentials, and tell it to initialize itself. So I'm going to do that on create real quickly, right? How you going to do that is in client, equals new, mobile service client, takes in a few variables. One is the app URL, the other one is the app key or string, and the context. You know the context. The app URL, we just saw it, it's in your URL that we, hold on a second. It's the URL you were given, right? That's your endpoint. The other one is the app key. This one looks like I can show you. So this is your mobile service URL. In fact, if you go there, you're going to see a landing page. So mobile service up and running, you know, just a landing page, doesn't do anything more than that. Right? So what you need is that. So I'm going to pass that into URL. App key. Find your app key under manage keys right here. Bottom here. Not very obvious, but that's where it is. You get the master key and the application key. What we care about is the application key. This is supposed to be a secret. We can regenerate it, but it will invalidate all your clients if you do that. So I'm just going to copy it. This will obviously come from a configuration file of some sort. I'm just going to do this. And obviously this throws an exception, malware form URL. I need to catch it. It's going to catch it. I know it's not going to throw that exception. It's going to perfectly find URL. Once you're here, basically you have an instance, you have a connection to your service that's running on Azure. This is your client. Let's just create a simple list of users. Nothing useful, but just to show you the concepts. So I'm just going to close it. I'm going to go up here. I'm going to data. There's no tables. Tables are there. Data is stored. You have to create the table. The schema is done for you at runtime. You're going to create the table and tell it something. So the first thing it's going to ask you what the table name is. You're going to be very careful with the table names, because what you name here is what you're going to call your class names. So you have a table called users. You're going to have a class called users of class. The case doesn't matter. And that's how it figures out, okay, this model or this entity, data entity maps to this table. So you need to choose carefully. So I'm just going to say users. The next bit here is the permissions. We get to permissions later. For now, I'm going to say anyone with an application key that's open to public. You got other stuff like only authenticated users, everyone, and only scripts and admins. So basically, anyone who runs my application gets access to this table for the moment. That's the default permissions. You got insert, update, delete, and read. So just going to create that and it should initialize. So you got one index. Right, put it there. it will create a column for you automatically called ID. All tables here will have a column for ID, and conversely, you should have the same property in your classes. So if you have a class called users.class, you need to have an int field called ID. If you don't, it will crash basically. It will throw an exception, right? If that's the only rule that you need to know. Other than that, so you can just go on. So what I'm going to do now is just going to create a class. It's a simple closure. So class. Remember, I need to call it the same as my table name. That's the only rule. Case doesn't matter. So user, I need to extend from anything. I need to have public. I'm not going to do data science setters. I'm just going to use a public variable. So I'm going to say public int ID, which is mandatory. Right. Let's just create a just string name, just on name. Right. And you, once you run this, you will see that name, you need to create a column called name, right? So whatever you name here, it will go on creating one more data model. So this, you can treat it like a data model, right? That describes how your data is structured. So I'm just going to save it. On its own, it's useless until you do something with the client. So what I'm going to do is, I'm just going to real quickly, right? This is plumbing code, nothing to do with the actual thing. So I'm just going to write a button here. Take care about the name. Just going to quickly hook the button up to my activity. So button is fine. ID.id.button1, which we need to import and cast down. Cast down. Okay. So we have a reference to a button on our own. So instead of one-click system on that, say set on with listener new. So this is for guys who are not coming from an Android background. This is basically a way of dragging the button from our layout file and then hooking up to a code. So I found it by view, by ID, and setting up an on-click listener. So once the user clicks that, we're going to run the on-click event. Right, so on the on-click event, let's create a user. Right, user. I'm going to create. Sorry, hold on a second. I said users. I said user here. That's not going to work. So I'm going to say users. It has to be the same. Just refactor quickly. Right. Set the ID to be its appointment field. Right? It doesn't matter if you set it to ignore it. So I'm going to just say right. Simple assignment. Now I'm going to take this object and I'm going to tell the client go ahead and create that column if it doesn't exist and insert this data. Right? So how I'm going to do that is say m table, let it call get table, asking for a class. Right? So the class is going to be dot class dot, and then you go insert. Asking for two things. The element which you're going to insert, which is the instance of our user, in this case, you pass that in. The other one is just a callback. This is completely asynchronous, so you don't worry about threading. All Android programmers know we don't do any network or any heavy lifting on the main thread. So you need to push this on to a separate thread, and then all of this will be done for you by the SDK. So you know, sort of network. but it will do it asynchronously. So when it completes, it's going to call back a function. You have to specify what that is. So can I implement it, or I'm going to write it in. So I'm going to say new table operation callback. Alright. You guys can see that. It takes in Eclipse and stuff. Takes in, gives you a user object, right? Basically what you passed in will be coming back to you. An exception, we call it exception, because Eclipse being done as renamed, and a response, right? First thing you're going to do is, okay, you need to check whether there was an exception. It's not going to throw any, it's not going to throw a usual exception if that happens. It's going to pass it in as an exception field. So, there's a common pattern where you would always check for an exception. If it's null, then if it's not null, there's dead ender, therefore there have an exception. You do what you need to do there and bail out of that. So I'm just going to quickly show you if the exception is not going to null, then something bad happened. So I'm going to say log dot. I'm just going to log it. I'm not going to do anything fancy. Message, I'm going to say exception dot get message, and I'm going to say a stack trace basically, exception dot get cause to give you a throwable. So I'll give you a nice little stack trace on what happened. And I'm going to return. If we are here, then more or less the operation succeeded, we are good. So log dot I information get class. That's basically it. Right. Very simple. You don't have to mess about with any network call or anything like that. Just create the object you want, set the properties you need, and off you go. Right. You don't have to worry about what services it calls on the back end. In fact, at the core, the architecture behind this, each one of your tables, if you're interested, right, will be a REST endpoint. So you have here HTTPS mobile meetup app azure.mobile.net, right? When it wants to insert something, what it does is it takes your user, it figures out what the table is, it appends, it basically constructs something like this, right? And passes in, for the insert, you're going to obviously do a post or put, and it does it for you, right? But you don't care about that because it's all insulated. Okay? But underneath, it just wraps your tables in a nice little RESTful layer. That's how it works. So let's see whether this works. I have an emulator running. It's going to be a little slow, I'm sorry, but I'll show you the real device because I can't project it on here. So if I click on a button, I should see something. Use my DDMS to see what's going on with the open messages. Let's see. Let's see, this gives me an error, unknown host exception. One of the first things that trips new users up is that it doesn't specifically mention this in the documentation. This API, this SDK basically implicitly asks for internet permissions. Right? In Android, anything that you do that sensitive internet operations are sensitive operations, so you need to ask the user for permissions. Android users will know that, but I'm just going to ask for that by going to my manifest. If you don't do that, what happens is it cannot reach the server. It's just going to say unknown host exception. If you need to know that bit, you're going to figure out if there's something wrong with your endpoint or there's something wrong with the internet connection. But it's not. It's actually internally it's an access denial. Wait, we modified the wrong manifest. I had many projects open, sorry. So it's actually the wrong manifest. Sorry, so I'm just going to say internet again. Internet. Problem is I had about 2 or 3 projects open. When I did a quick jump, it opened up the wrong manifest. It opened up the manifest for another project. And I inadvertently. Yeah, this should work hopefully. Then it works. Fine. Still getting some numbers, okay. User was inserted successfully. Okay, sorry about that. Wrong file was being modified. So I'm just going to go back. I'm going to verify whether this is indeed the case. Go to my data tab. Users, now you see there's one record there, right? Simple as that, right? Just a concept. Right? It doesn't do anything useful. So you can keep. So let's see. I had a list of users, and I need to get back the data from the web service, from the mobile service. How do I do that? Let's say I needed to get it, put it into an adapter, and bind it to a list view, a list of users, for example. Right. So how I could do that is, well, let's see. Let's see on Go create. We'll say client dot get table dot execute. This is equal to saying select star from users. If you wanted, say, a where clause, an order clause, and or joins, you could go something like this. Client dot get table. You always start with get table. Pass in the table you want by what is the domain model you have. Dot where dot add you can go equals, ends with, just doing a like, right? Not equals, and so on. Right? You can basically chain a bunch of where clauses or clauses, order by, group by, whatever. So right now I want a list of, I need everything on the table, so I can just call execute. Right? So execute, just calls back, asks me for the callback list. So when it's ready to send back data, it will call this method. So I'm just going to say, table query callback, right? So the stuff that will send back is a list of users, user objects. You ask for users, when you give back a list of user objects, right? Underneath is JSON, but it passes the JSON and then gives you back a nice bunch of POJO, a list of POJOs. So the point is, all that heavy lifting is done by someone else. That's what it does. So I'm just going to rename it because Eclipse is being stupid here. Users. R1 is the count, I believe. Number of rows. Return exception. And response is response. Right. So I can just do for each. It's an iteratable, so you can just go. So I can access the page of cars as this. So user.name will be populated for me. Right? It will be passed and populated for me. So let's just say, let's just do that. So if I run it, I should get back at least one record from the server. But you notice that this thing doesn't give you any progress indication. If there's something happening in the background, there is no progress indication. Even when you insert it, right? User doesn't know what's happening. It doesn't freeze the UI or anything, but there is no indication to the user. The documentation does not mention any of this, how you should handle that sort of thing. But the SDK provides you a mechanism called service filters. What a service filter is you can, it's kind of like a listener that you can ask. You can create a service listener and tell it every time there's going to be a network operation, let me know. Right? So I can do something to the UI, maybe show a progress bar or a loading indicator, and every time the network call return, before any of my code gets returned, call the service filter first, saying it's done. You can discard the update the UI based on that. Docs don't say much about it. This is something that I learned while I was doing this. So pretty simple. There is something called when you instantiate it for the first time, the M client for the first time, you can change a method called with service filter. Asks you for an instance of a service filter. You can pass in null, but that's the way it happens by default. It passes in null, meaning it will never get modified. But what you can do is, you can create your own class that implements service filter, implement a few methods, and do your UI work on that. Right? So for example, if I want to show a progress indicator when something is happening in the background, I can do something like this. I can say class, my service filter, implements service filter, and is to implement one method. Service filter request. Okay. Again, Eclipse is giving problems with the name. So it's basically this is going to be request. That's the request is about to execute. This is a callback. It's supposed to call once it's done. Right? That's what I've told here. So I'm going to say callback. This is the response callback. This is a filter callback and that's a response callback. I think. Check the box. So that's the request. Next service filter callback. And then this response callback. You can get these method names from the documentation, Azure documentation, right? So I'm just going to. So I'm just going to say it's not null. I'm going to say new my service filter. So that my service filter is now hooked in and is listening for events. So what do I need to do when something happens? Maybe I should want to show a progress indicator saying something's happening in the background. So I can say progress. Progress dialog. So it's going to be a progress dialog. Progress dialog. Now we'll come back and initialize it here. Passing in the context, and I'm going to say pd.set title keys weight. So that's what's going to happen on that, right? So moment something network or some call happens, my service filter gets called. But notice that my service filter runs on a separate thread. So it's unsafe to actually manipulate your UI controls on a separate thread. You get unexpected result. So what you should do is you should do all the UI updates on the UI thread. It provides a helper class, a helper method called run on UI. Run on UI thread. Sorry, it's in here. So run on UI thread, and it will ask you for a runnable. So you can basically say new runnable. And basically you can say something like this, if I remember it right. So the pd dot show, you want to show it. So what happens when it's done, you need to do something called let's use for on next. So next filter callback on next. It's in two arguments. The request and the callback. So service filter response call. For some reason all the argument names are gone wonky in my Eclipse. Because I didn't copy the properties. Now, make sure when you are doing this or when you copy the Java, make sure you copy the properties. Java docs also, right? That's what's happened to me. So Eclipse doesn't know how to. In the project, maybe my variable names will be. So this argument would be on response, the response itself, and the exception. Alright. So when it's done, you will call this the on next. It's ready for the next operation, right? So you could obviously do a exception check and then continue or not. But what I'm going to do is, before anything, even if there's an exception, I need to hide my progress indicator, which is now running. Right? So again, I'm going to do that on the UI thread. So I'm going to say run on UI thread, new developer. And this time I'm going to say pd dot hide. So I actually should probably want to destroy it altogether, so I can say this is much better. And there's one requirement here. You need to call a method called response dot you need to pass it on to the, you need to tell it, okay, the next operations in the chain, you need to tell it to continue and go on and continue to do that operation. So how you do that is the response. Hold on, sorry. Since we the callback on response. So response callback. use it on the right? So telling it, go on and do the next one in line. It's a little complicated, but what I'm doing is, before operation happens, I'm going to show up PD, progress dialog, right? Once it's done, I'm going to hide it. I'm going to hide the progress dialog, and I'm telling continue to the next response, right? That is what's happening here. So just run it and see. Please wait. Yeah. So if I say, if I insert a new user, I should set the title basically, not the, sorry, set the content, not the title. So title is fine. PD dot set message working. But you get the idea, right? So you can basically hook into the thing and can show some UI based on that. This is not, again, not mentioned in the documentation. You're going to look through the actual source code of the SDK, figure out how it can be implemented. So, just to recap, you need to implement my service filter and then pass an instance of that when you create your client. That's it. Any questions up to this point? I know it's a little convoluted, but any questions?
When you create the user class, the namespace doesn't matter at all. The mapping happens only with the class name itself.
Yes.
You can have any namespace, the Java.
The namespace will be automatically it's inside the package. So basically that's a package.
It doesn't have effect when you see it as a mappings.
No, it's unique because as I said, the map thing actually happens here. So this is unique. Your endpoint is always going to be unique anyway. So here, when you say users, it's actually going to append users, passing the parameter. It's going to be a post in this case, and pass the post parameters. So it's going to be unique.
What if I have two users class?
You cannot do that. You cannot. You can actually duplicate with one exception. So, any questions up to this point?
Does it provide any built-in features for offline capabilities as well?
Not really. You have to be connected to the internet for that. What you can do, you can obviously implement caching on your client. That's a different thing. In fact, you see how to do that because it doesn't hold the session either. For example, if you log into Facebook, when we implement the Facebook login, you log in first time. For that session, it remembers you've logged in. But when you restart the app, it will ask you to log in again. Right? What you expected to do, and again, is not in the documentation again. What you expected to do is to get it returns back a client token. Right? That has an expiry date. You're supposed to retain that token on your local cache and pass it back every time you instantiate the client, right? So that the user is always logged in. Again, that is not obvious, but please see, I'll show you how it's done when you go into authentication. Right? No questions up to here. So, so let's go into authentication. Right? We can authenticate against these providers, Facebook, Google, Twitter, and Windows Live. You can provide your own auth provider. I'm not going to go into that, but that's also possible. So you can plug in your own or your custom authentication implementation. But I'm just going to work with Facebook for the moment. I don't know, it's almost the same. The code is almost the same for all the other providers. So we got 3 levels of permissions for CRUD operations. Create, update and delete on the table. So by default it's everyone. Anyone who has your app can insert into the users table. Right? What we want is only authenticated users. Right? So and the other one is scripts and admins. Right? So we're not going to go to the last one. So I just want to make sure the user is authenticated before be able to insert or delete data from my tables. I'm going to integrate Facebook authentication for that in a few lines of code, literally. Actually, most of the work happens in the backend where you're going to set up the whole thing. So first thing you're going to need is a Facebook developer, a Facebook application. So I'm just going to go to my developer of Facebook.com. I'm going to go to my apps. I'm going to create a new app. I have a bunch of apps. I'm just going to create a new app, and so the app name is going to be unique. It's valid. Okay, that's fine. We'll continue. Last great. So once you have this, right? You need to do one thing. You need to enable a website with Facebook login. That's what you need, right? Once you do that, it will ask you what the site URL is. Again, you go back to our dashboard. Where is our dashboard? You go back to our dashboard. You're going to find that endpoint here. So dashboard. This is what you need, right? Once you save the changes there, takes a few minutes, but hopefully it should be fine. What you need now is, as with all Facebook applications, you need the app ID and the app secret. Anyone who has integrated Facebook will know these people. So you go back to your dashboard, right? You're going to go into identity. That's a new tab called identity. And this is where you set up your identity, your keys. You've got, as I said, Microsoft, Facebook, Twitter, and Google built in. Anything else you got to code on your own. Right now I'm interested in Facebook, so I'm just going to set it up now. So I'm just going to do that. So app ID, just going to copy that. And the app secret. Copy that. Okay, so now that's set up. Next thing you want to do is go back to your data, go to users, and you're going to say there's a tab called permissions. By default, anyone with an application key, that's anyone with your application. What you need to do now is going to say only authenticated users. Normally you want people who are not even logged in to read data, maybe, depending on what your application does. So in that case, you can just leave it as everyone with an application key. Right now, I'm just going to say everyone needs to be authenticated before they can do any CRUD operations. So I'm just going to save that. And I'll see what happens, right? What is going to happen now if I run that code? Project contains errors, it says. No, it does not contain errors. That's a new. What's going to happen now? It's going to give you a 403 access denied. So you are not authenticated. Right? The moment you try to say read from that database, you should, from the table, you should get an error. Shows up this way working. showing another point exception somewhere. Okay. You know what? I'm just going to remove my filters, giving you a bit of an error. So let's just delete that for a moment. Get a 403. Yeah, but it shouldn't crash. Hold on. It should just do. I have caught an exception here, so it should say 403, something else. Let's just. This is coming from inside the SDK. Maybe I should, yeah, catch this exception here. Obviously, that's right. I didn't catch that exception. The pattern is always, when there's an exception, catch it. Not catch it, check whether the exception is not null and then continue. Right? That's what happened there. So I'm just going to say if exception is not equal to null, then log dot E, or log dot E, sorry. Get class dot get name exception dot get message and exception goes and trace get pause. Okay, and then obviously got to return. Hopefully that's the case. There you go. So right now error processing, I caught it, and then so it's right now it's saying 401 unauthorized. They need to be authorized before you can act. So how are you going to get it? How are you going to authorize this? So one of the things you can do is I'm going to integrate Facebook login. So I went ahead and went to my identities and I filled this out, as you remember. How you authenticate is quite simple. You don't need to worry about what on your web graph, right? You just need to find a place on create. I should probably do here. So I'm going to say mclient dot login. provider. It's asking me what the provider is. So I'm going to say it's a constant, it's an enumeration, dot Facebook. I've got Google, Microsoft, Twitter, and the callback itself. So I'm going to say new, use authentication callback. Yes. Again, make sure you catch the exception. If exception not equal to now, let's call it here. So here we say, let's copy the same thing. Okay. Otherwise, we're going to say log.i. Then once you logged in successfully, we can execute this. We might want to bring another for demonstration purposes. Let me demonstrate that you can read after you authenticate. What you're going to see is slightly different now. Yeah, I apologize for being a little slow. This emulator is taking a long time. Now we go. Yeah, connected to the service. You have no control. For the moment, you have no control over what shows up here. I tried overriding this. It's coming from this. You can patch the SDK if you want, but that's not really. Remember when I said this service has a bit of some rough edges around it? This is one of them. Not the best UI. iOS does it much better. What they've done is they basically embedded a web view and then they redirect you to Facebook page. Right? So even on the phone it's a little slow. Right? But I'm just going to authenticate to show you this is what we have at the moment. I'm sure it will improve soon. We're continuously upgrading. So I'm going to so you don't get any progress indicators, so you cannot override that thing. That's one of the really bad things about the login flow, right? Maybe they'll improve that in the future, but iOS has a few callbacks that you can So for the first time, just like in a normal authentication flow, it asks you, mobile Meetup would like to access your public profile, etc. So I'm just going to say yes, that's fine. Yeah. Logged in successfully, and soon after that, we retrieved the data, right, which we inserted. Right, so it's not, it doesn't take, it literally takes one line of code to integrate Facebook, Gmail, or Twitter, or even Windows Live. You don't have to worry about all the other code that's involved. Any questions up to this point? No, it's not supported at the moment. It only allows you to access your public profile. This is only for authentication. You cannot do posting on the wall or anything like that. For the moment, you cannot do that. No email address. Like I said, it's just 4 months old. This SDK is just 4 months old. You are not new to it, as you can see. I've written one application. It was like, all right. There are no other questions. Let's just move ahead. Where was I? So the next week I want to show you talk to you about is something for server scripts, right? This is similar to a trigger. If you've used Oracle or MS SQL, just before you insert a record, you get an insert trigger, update trigger, or delete trigger. You can think of it like that. Right? It allows you to build custom logic when something happens to your data. So you've got insert, update, read, and delete triggers. Right? Note that delete callback is called del because on the JavaScript SDK, delete is the keyword in JavaScript. Right? So that's why they call it del, not delete. So it looks like this function insert. You get ID user request, and the default implementation is to just go ahead and execute it. Where you find it is, if you go to your data, users. So for example, when you want any trigger scripts for this table, you go to script. Right? And you got the insert script here, insert, update, delete. So it has some code completion, not very good, but it has some code completion as well built in, right? So just want to show you. So the server scripts basically insert, update, delete. So you notice there's a certain pattern to this. The second argument is always going to be a user object, always, right? Third argument is always going to be the request that's coming in. Yeah? The user represents that's the user that is making the change, right? So you can even do validation on the server. You can say user.id is null, then you can basically send a response saying login. You can do it on the client end as well as a server. So you cannot spoof it. You can always the first argument change according to operation. So for example, insert you're also going to have the item object. That's the item you're going to insert. In this case, the user object. So I can say item dot name give me the equivalent of user dot name. Whatever I pass from my application will be there. Similar to update, delete only takes the ID and the read obviously takes a query object. Yeah. So this is an example. This is a simple example of an insert, right? Let's say I have logic that says the user ID is not equal to the item.user ID is not equal to the current user ID. I can basically send a response saying forbidden, access denied. Else I can go ahead and insert. So it's like a deny trigger. So I can do that. So this whole thing is quite a large topic. You got a huge script reference. MSDN gives you right. Yeah, this again topic is pre-release. Documentation is going to change anytime, but more or less it doesn't change over a couple of months. I've worked with it. So basically gives you everything that you need to know about. It's a language on its own. It's a very simple language. You need to learn to do some validation of the server. Not all applications will use it. There are some instances where you need to use it. Right? So, any questions up to that point about scripts? Because I'm not going to go into it in detail. I want to talk about push notifications. The next topic. The bit of a large topic, and I can't demonstrate it, so I'm going to go through a code walkthrough with you guys. Right? People who have you guys, Android developers, have you worked with GCM or C2DM? Anyone? Or you work with C2DM? So it's GCM, basically. C2DM is the application we no longer being used. So I want to just walk you through. Just takes 5 steps, easy steps. Right? I'm going to walk you through that. First thing you need to do is you need to first register for an account with GCM. You need to go to Google API console and register for it. Do you want me to show you how that's done? Okay, for people who haven't seen that before, I will just really quickly show you the Google API console. Okay, so this is the API console. You need a Gmail account. You need to be signed into your Gmail account. What you need to do now is say create session as expired. Create. The moment it does that? It will ask you what are the services you want to enable on your service. So what you need is Google Cloud Extension for Android. You want for Chrome also, you want to just enable that. Once you've done that, go to API access, create a new server key. Just create. What you need is a server key. You'll be using that to set up the server and push. The push happens in two parts, right? You've got to register your device with CTB or GCM, and you've got to have a server that will basically push stuff to your device. So you need an API key for that. This is what you need. So if you just go to your console now, go to push, and notice I said GCM is not the only thing. You've got APNS and Windows as well, right? API key, but you got just got. This is the server key. Right? Just set the server key up and save it. So that's it for the server end of stuff, right? The next step that you need to do, step number 2 is copy the API key from the Google API services. Okay, now that's what we just did, push and paste the key. The third step is actually integrating GCM. This is, you do it once, that's it. You just copy paste the code for the rest of your life because it's a common pattern. But I'm just going to walk you through, okay, you guys can see the code. Yeah, so you copy gcm.jar and you basically add some permissions. So you need CDB, message, or basically bunch of services and the actual receiver, right? Basically, so all this is documented in the getting started guide. This is boilerplate code that you copy paste when you're done, right? The next thing that you need to do is you need to register the device and handle the pushes. So let's say you have a user ID, we have user table. You might need to also add a field called device ID. That basically indicates that this is the device that this user is using. And you get the device ID by using the get registration ID. It will give you back a unique 64 character string that is unique, globally unique for your device, right? So when the push arrives, the on message fires, and then you can basically go ahead and notify the user. This bit is any Android developer should know this bit, whoever has integrated push. The next bit is what this is specific to Azure, right? On the insert trigger, right? Let's say you need to notify the user on an insert. There's new items to be pulled from the server. This is how you do it. You say request or execute. Right? You insert, go ahead and insert. And you can also pass in the success function. So assuming that the execution was successful, right? There is an object called push.gcm.set. So in this case, my object is my table is user. So I can say users.device ID, right? And item.text if I have a text or whatever the data I need to push. So this will cause Azure to push data to your device. You push data to your device through a server-side script. There's no other way to do it. This is what your server guy would do when you integrate push. You would be basically writing a bunch of network calls to GCM servers, pushing data. This is all this is handled for you through Azure. That's basically the service. Right? It's that you need to play around with it to understand. It's not that hard to understand once you get over it. The rest of it is just the services that it provides, diagnostics like CPU time, the memory consumption, the API time. We can basically benchmark to stuff, how much of it you're getting, how much responses you're putting out. You've got logging as well. So in the server side, the scripting language has console.info, console.error, right? You can basically look at all your logs by going into logs. So anything that you output from your server-side scripts will be output here. Right? There's a central management console for that. So other than that, you got scale up and scale down. On the demo con, you're not going to create more than one VM, right? But once you once you want to scale, you can create new instances, and it does it for you seamlessly. You don't have to worry about bringing in extra CPU and bandwidth and anything like that. It's just there for you. You can also scale the VM size. So you start off with a world core processor, then you want to up it to a quad core, and you can basically do it seamlessly without service interruption. And that's the whole point of using the platform as a service to scale it. You got other services as well. It's not the only thing. You got other. One of the more interesting ones that I have mentioned specifically is called the scheduler. You can think of it as a Linux cron job or Windows scheduler. This will run a script, a server-side script that you wrote periodically. You can either do it periodically or you can do it on demand. Right? Through a script you can execute. You can tell it to execute. So you can do some stuff like purge old data. You want to truncate data which is more than a year old. You can run a background scheduler task for that. I personally used to get sources from. I wrote a newsfeed application. Periodically goes out and reads RSS feeds, aggregates it, puts it into a table, and basically pushes it out to devices, basically, all the registered users. Right? I use the scheduler for that. It's a very simple and right? We can also schedule pushers. Now, that's what the example you saw was a real time. You can schedule it. We send at any time. Third-party stuff here as well. SendGrid is one of those third-party services. Anyone use SendGrid? It's email as a service, right? You access email via API. So if you want to have a backend services sending out emails, when you register, you can send an email. Right now, natively you can't do that because Azure doesn't have that. If you have SendGrid, if you purchase an account from SendGrid, they give you an API which they can use. Right? There's another one called Pusher, which is enhanced push services. Right? You can schedule it. You can do it with the scheduler, or you can use a service like Pusher that make it very easy. With a few lines of code, you get to serve a lot of enhancements to the push services. It's kind of like Urban Airship. If anyone's used the Urban Airship, integrate push. So Pusher is another third-party service. It integrates with Azure. There are a few other services as well, the third-party services that partner with Microsoft. So yeah, that's basically a quick introduction to getting started. You didn't see a useful app being obviously written. This is just a bunch of code that will get you started in the right track and show you where everything is. Get you started. Any questions up to this point? Yes, you can store blocks. Right, no problems. So, find a large object. So, not sure how you do that on this, but you can do it on this. I'm not sure if you do it on the client end or you. I guess it could be a base64 imported string that you say you select image, let's say, from the gallery, from the phone gallery. Basically, base encode it, read it, base encode it, right? So let's say you have something like, so usually you have photos, table called photos. You have photos of class. So you can have a string called data, which will hold the base64 encoded data, and that will basically push it to the packet. And when you get it back, you need to unbase encode or unencode it and then render it. You can do it like that. It's supposed by the law. I haven't done it, but it's possible. I'm sure it's possible. Sorry, I flipped up a couple of times. being a little bit of a pain. So.
Okay, thank you very much, Doctor. This is Colombo CAD community. This is Meetup. We have kind of a practical session. For some people to do practical session, we jump into got a practical session on the first mobile development. I'm not sure how much. Yeah. Impact you have on the practical session. We have the functions to work on.
Is this format? I mean. Right, I tend to do things live, actually build up, but you can't do anything in 1 hour really. It's very difficult. So I can only show you, basic stuff where all you guys do. Is this format good, or is there a better format you can think of? I mean, we are open to suggestions. Straight up presentations are also good. Yeah, maybe
why don't we kind of a long session?
Yeah, at least you saw me making a lot of mistakes. That's another way of learning. So, maybe that is also always a pain.
Maybe you send the summary information to the registration. Yeah, you can send the sessions to the format to me. We send this points, different formats that we can bring. So shall we give you chop round couples, please?
We'll give the PowerPoint so that a bunch of links in there that you need, right? And a bunch of code in for push as well. So you get started on that. I don't know how you can do that. Maybe upload it to Meetup.
Slide share and we send you a link.
Okay.
And we send the summary of what we discussed. Short summary.
Sure. The source code, yeah, it's pretty. Yeah, but okay, definitely. I can put it on a GitHub account and you can do it. That's fine. We have a GitHub account, right? Okay, it doesn't do anything useful, but at least you have a yeah, new comments.
And then we have a different solution for that.
Yes. That's a pretty good question. That the use cases for this sort of thing. You want to build a quick, simple application, which is a sub feature of your main application. Now, I know someone who has they were writing a game. They want to build a leaderboard, right? With the higher scores. Obviously, they need to form the game. They need to write a REST service to give the score, the name, and stuff like that. They're not going to build the backend service after that. They simply used a service like this, which they did in less than a day. It was very fast. Right? Most of the effort was done actually taken up building the UI. The backend services was nothing basically. They just had to model the stuff they wanted per system. And that's it, call the right APIs and it's all there. So, yeah, so you can have a hybrid solution, definitely yes.
So mobile as well.
Yes. I mean, Azure is basically a general purpose platform, right? So you can have, just like you can spin up servers, you can run a document service, or you can run all of these. You can
so the DB is common from both.
you can it's basically underneath. It's actually an MSS.
So is it common from mobile as well as
Yes.
normal?
Yes. It's on a database server. We set it up. We saw the database server. So it's just a database server.
Okay, do you have any other questions? We have some questions.